The world is watching the Middle East burn. In June 2025, Israel launched a surprise military operation against Iran, striking nuclear facilities, assassinating generals, and destroying air defenses in what became known as the 12-Day War. The United States joined the fight, striking Iran's most fortified underground nuclear sites. Iran fired missiles back. Hundreds died. Then it happened again, on February 28, 2026. The United States and Israel launched a second, even bigger wave of strikes. Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, the man who ruled the Islamic Republic for over 3 decades, was killed. Tehran burned. Beirut shook. The Strait of Hormuz, the artery through which 20% of the world's oil flows, was threatened. The Middle East had not seen fire like this in a generation. And in the middle of all of it, inside a forward military hospital in a classified location near the conflict zone, a quiet woman in blue nurse. Scrubs moved between beds, checking charts, adjusting for lines, and saying nothing. Her name badge said, Nurse Sarah Malik. Nobody knew who she really was. This is her story. If stories like this move you, if you believe that the most powerful people are often the ones no one notices, then hit subscribe before you go any further. Because this story is only getting started. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and fear. It always did. But tonight, the fear was louder. Sarah Malik walked through Ward 7 at exactly 2:47 in the morning. Her soft-soled shoes made no sound on the cold tile floor. The fluorescent lights above hummed. A monitor beeped somewhere down the hall. She moved with a kind of stillness that came from years of training. Not nursing training alone, but something deeper. Something that had no name on her hospital badge. She was 36 years old, slender, brown eyes that never blinked too long at anything. A hijab, the color of midnight, tucked neatly under her scrub collar. The other nurses called her the ghost. Not because she was scary, because she was always there before you called her. Because she never raised her voice. Because she could walk into a room full of chaos and somehow, without shouting, make everyone slow down. Dr. Harun Abbasi had a different name for her. He called her the floor nurse. He said it the way some men say just a floor nurse. Just someone to hand him instruments and record vittles. He had his medical degree from London. He had 3 publications. He had no idea. None of them did. Outside, the night was heavy with news. Word had come through the staff radio that U.S. and Israeli aircraft had struck targets deep inside Iran again. Casualty numbers were still coming in. The strikes had hit Tehran, Isfahan.com. The supreme leader was confirmed dead. Iranian ballistic missiles had been fired back at Israel. Hezbollah in Lebanon had launched rockets toward Haifa. The region was a pressure cooker with no valve. And Sarah's hospital officially listed as a civilian trauma facility sat less than 40 kilometers from an active military corridor. She had known this 3 weeks ago when she arrived. She had said nothing. She refilled a saline drip. She adjusted a sleeping patient's pillow. She paused at the window at the end of the hall and looked out into the darkness. Below, she could see the parking lot. 2 armed guards at the gate. A civilian ambulance idling with its lights off. Her eyes moved to the tree line beyond the perimeter fence. She stood very still for exactly 4 seconds. Then she walked back to the nurse's station, picked up a chart, and continued her rounds. Nobody saw the way her jaw had tightened. Nobody saw the way her breathing had shifted, controlled, tactical, like a soldier reading terrain. Nobody noticed the small device clipped under her watch strap that was not a fitness tracker. A younger nurse named Amina jogged up beside her, breathless. Sarah, Dr. Abbasi wants the new trauma patient prepped for review. He's in the break room. He says do it before 6 a.m. Sarah nodded. It's done. I prepped him an hour ago. Amina blinked. How did you know his chart indicated deterioration? It was the logical next step. Sarah handed her a folded printout. His overnight stats. Blood pressure trend. I've already adjusted the medication ratio. Amina stared at the paper. Then it's Sarah. You're not supposed to adjust medications without doctor approval. Sarah met her eyes calmly. I documented everything. Dr. Abbasi can review it when he finishes his tea. She turned and walked away. Amina stood holding the paper, mouth slightly open. Down the hall, past the double doors, past the trauma bay, past the locked supply room, Sarah stopped at a water fountain. She bent and drank. While her head was down, she spoke quietly, barely above a whisper. To no one visible. To nothing in the hallway. Package is stable. Corridor is soft. Eastern tree line, count 4. Repeat, count 4. She stood up, dried her mouth, walked back to her rounds. The night shift had 7 hours left. It would not be a quiet 7 hours. At 4:15 a.m., the power went out. Not a flicker. Not a brief surge. A full, hard blackout. The whole building dropped into darkness for 3 long seconds before the backup generators kicked in and the emergency lighting painted everything a dim, uneasy orange. The monitors stuttered. Alarms fired across 3 wards simultaneously. In the break room, Dr. Abbasi spilled his tea. In Ward 7, Sarah was already moving. She had heard the electrical cut before the lights even went out. A half-second gap between the external transformers shutting down and the internal feeds responding. She had counted it, filed it. That gap was not a coincidence. She pushed through the double doors into the trauma bay. 2 junior nurses were frozen near the central monitor station, wide-eyed in the amber light. A patient in bed 4 was reaching for his oxygen mask in panic. Bed 4, stay still, Sarah said. Her voice was not loud. It didn't need to be. Something in the tone cut through noise. Your oxygen is running on tank. You have 40 minutes. You are safe. He stopped reaching. She turned to the nurses. Ruwana checked the generator panel on the east wall. Tell me if the bypass switch has been manually tripped. Lena, call the front desk. Ask them who requested maintenance access in the last 6 hours. Both nurses moved without questioning why. This was the thing about Sarah. She gave instructions the way gravity worked. Silently, inevitably, in a direction that made sense. Dr. Abbasi appeared at the trauma bay door. Hair disordered, tea stain on his shirt. What is happening? Why are my ICU monitors offline? Backup power is running. ICU monitors will sync in 40 seconds, Sarah said, still moving. The blackout was external, not internal. How do you know that? Because the generator lag was 2.8 seconds, a 1.4. That means the external feed was cut cleanly, not blown. She was already at the window, looking out. Internal failures are dirty. This was surgical. Abbasi stared at her. You are a nurse. Yes, she said. And your ICU monitors just synced. He looked at the screen. They had. He opened his mouth, closed it. Ruwana came back from the east wall, slightly out of breath. Sarah, the bypass switch. It has been flipped. From the outside, the panel cover is broken. Sarah nodded once. Lena appeared from the hallway. Front desk says a maintenance request came in at 3 a.m., signed off by Dr. Abbasi. Abbasi turned slowly. I signed no maintenance request. Silence. Sarah looked at the 2 armed guards through the window. They were at the gate, where they should be. But one of them was standing differently. Weight on the wrong foot. Head turned at a slight angle that had nothing to do with watching the road. He was watching the building. She looked at the tree line. The 4 shapes she had counted earlier. 3 now. Her pulse did not change. Her face did not change. But something inside her shifted, a gear turning, a state switching, and the woman who had been adjusting for lines and refilling saline quietly became something else entirely. She kept her voice the same, soft, clinical, unalarming. "Dr. Abbasi," she said, turning from the window, "I need you to move all non-ambulatory patients from Ward 7 to the interior corridor. Tell the staff it's a precaution for the generator issue." Abbasi frowned. "That is a massive disruption. Do you know how long?" "Yes," Sarah said. "About 14 minutes, which is exactly how long we have." "How long we have for what?" She looked at him, just looked. And whatever he saw in those brown eyes, something ancient, something certain, something that had absolutely nothing to do with a hospital ward, made him stop arguing. 14 minutes, he repeated quietly. "I'll get the staff started," she said. "You stay with the patients." She walked past him through the double doors into the main corridor. And the moment she was out of sight, her hand went to the device under her watch strap. She pressed it once. Somewhere, a phone rang. Somewhere, someone answered. And Sarah Malik whispered for words into the dark hallway of a hospital that nobody important was supposed to know about. For words that, in certain rooms, in certain capitals, meant everything had already changed. The nest is live. The first sound came at 4:28 a.m. Not an explosion, not a gunshot. Something quieter and more frightening. The soft crunch of boots on gravel outside the perimeter wall. Measured steps. Disciplined steps. Sarah heard them from inside Ward 3, where she was calmly helping move a post-surgical patient onto a rolling bed. Nobody else had heard anything yet. She straightened, checked her watch. 11 minutes since the power cut. She was 3 minutes ahead of her own estimate. Good. That means they're careful. Careful was dangerous. Young nurse Amina rushed in from the hallway, her face pale, eyes wide. "Sarah, there are people outside. Around the back wall. I saw them from the storeroom window. They have," she swallowed. "They have weapons." "How many did you see?" Amina blinked. The question was so calm, it seemed wrong. "I 3, maybe 4. Sarah, we need to call the police. The phone lines were cut when the power went out," Sarah said. "My mobile will have no signal in this zone. There's a military communications blackout active since 3 a.m. Cellular is down across this corridor." Amina stared at her. "How do you know all this?" Sarah didn't answer. She finished securing the patient's bed rail, checked his oxygen, and turned to Amina. "Listen to me. I need you to do exactly 3 things. Can you do that?" Amina nodded, though her hands were shaking. "First, go to the supply room on floor B, the locked metal cabinet behind the clean linen shelf. The combination is 7144. Inside, you will find a black case. Bring it to me here." Amina's mouth opened. "How do you know about a cabinet? I've never second," Sarah continued. "Tell Dr. Abbasi to move everyone away from exterior-facing windows. No staff near the east or north walls. Third, do not tell anyone else what you saw outside. No panic. Not yet." Amina was trembling now. "Sarah, what is in that cabinet?" Sarah held her gaze, steady, warm, completely without fear. "Things I hope we don't need," she said. "Go." Amina ran. Sarah moved through the corridor to the nurse's station. She pulled out a hospital layout map from the desk drawer, the kind used during fire drills, and spread it flat. She traced routes with her finger. Loading dock. Stairwell B interior courtyard. Sub-basement.her. Eyes moved quickly, precisely like someone reading a tactical grid. The hospital had 3 vulnerable entry points. The main entrance currently covered by the 2 guards, one of whom she no longer trusted. The service entrance in the rear, no guard, facing the tree line, and the emergency exit on the north side locked. But with a compromised frame she had noticed on her first day and quietly noted in a report that never went anywhere. They would come through the service entrance first, create a distraction at the main gate, send a third team to the north exit. It was textbook, clean, professional. She folded the map, put it in her scrub pocket. She went to the medication window and spoke through the glass to the night pharmacist, an older man named Tariq, who was reading a newspaper with studied calm. "Tariq," she said softly, "lock your dispensary and go to the sub-basement break room. Stay there until someone with this comes to find you." She slipped a folded piece of paper through the window. He unfolded it. It was a number, a 12-digit authentication code. He looked at the number, then at her. His newspaper lowered very slowly. "Sarah," he said. "Who are you?" "Someone who needs you safe," she said. "Go." He went. She turned from the window at the end of the corridor. The service entrance door, heavy steel, supposedly locked, gave a sound. A low, metallic protest. Someone on the other side was working the mechanism. Sarah walked toward it, not away. Toward, she unclipped something from under her watch strap. Not the communication device. The other one? The flat, matte black object that was not, and had never been, a standard medical accessory. She stood to the left of the door, back to the wall, breathing slow. The handle moved. She didn't flinch. Behind her, somewhere in Ward 7, a child patient began to cry softly. Sarah closed her eyes for 1 second. Not tonight, she thought. Not one of them. The door opened. 2 men stepped through the service entrance. They wore civilian clothes, dark jackets, boots, no insignia. But Sarah saw the way they moved. Sweep left, sweep right, one covering the other, and knew instantly. These were not thieves, not protesters, not opportunists energized by the chaos of a Middle East in flames. These were professionals. The first man got 3 steps inside the corridor before he stopped. Sarah was directly beside him. Her left hand controlled his weapon arm at the wrist, locked, angled away. Her right elbow had already found the precise point below his shoulder that disrupted motor function. He dropped, quietly. She lowered him to the tile like a sleeping child. The second man spun. He was faster, bigger, trained, not fast enough. Sarah moved in a way that had no name in any nursing manual. Fluid, economic, every movement serving 2 purposes at once. And for seconds, it was over. The second man was on the floor, breathing, unhurt, but completely immobilized by the positioning of his own body weight. She took both their radios. Their weapons she secured in the locked medication cabinet behind the nurse's station. She zip-tied their wrists with restraint bands from the supply cart, the kind used for agitated patients, and left, them breathing and still behind a supply room door. The entire exchange had taken 11 seconds. She had not made a sound louder than a footstep. When Amina returned from floor B, breathless, carrying the black case, she almost walked into Sarah in the hallway. Sarah was standing there, completely calm, adjusting her hijab. "The case," Sarah said. She took it, opened it with practiced hands. Amina looked at the contents. Her face went still. Inside the case, nestled in foam cutouts, a compact encrypted radio unit, a folded document with a classified header, a secondary identification badge, the kind with no photograph, only a code and a symbol Amina didn't recognize, and a small medical kit, sealed. "What is that badge?" Amina whispered. "Amina," Sarah said, clicking the radio unit open. "How many patients are still in exterior rooms?" Amina blinked hard, refocused. 5. Dr. Abbasi is still arguing about moving them. He says it's unnecessary. Sarah looked up, Something moved behind her eyes. Patience running thin. She handed Amina the folded document from the case. "Give this to Dr. Abbasi. He will stop arguing." Amina took it with trembling hands and ran. Sarah pressed the radio Unix activation sequence. 3 tones, low, high, low, and then static. She spoke into it at a frequency that would have meant nothing to anyone without the corresponding decryption equipment. Alpha 7 to Overwatch. Facility is hot. 2 tangos neutralized inside perimeter. Minimum 8 additional outside east tree line plus north access. Package is secure. Staff civilian, non-combatant. Requesting extraction window and backup on eastern approach. Confirm. A voice came back through the static. Tight, controlled. Military, copy, Alpha 7. Overwatch confirms your signal. ETA, 14 minutes. Hold the facility. You are primary on this. Confirmed, Sarah said. She clicked the radio off and tucked it into her scrub pocket. Down the hall, she heard running feet. Then Dr. Abbasi's voice, not arrogant now, not dismissive, something she had never heard from him before. Quiet. He appeared at the corridor junction. The document was in his hand. His face had lost its color. He looked at Sarah as if seeing her for the first time. Which, in every way that mattered, he was. "This document," he said. His voice was low. "It authorizes you too to do what needs to be done," Sarah said. "Are the exterior patients moved?" A pause. A long one. "Yes," Abbasi said. "Good. Now I need you to do something harder." She met his eyes. "I need you to trust me for the next 14 minutes. Not as a nurse. Not as your subordinate. As the person in this building who knows what we are dealing with." She paused. "Can you do that?" Dr. Harun Abbasi, London medical degree, 3 academic publications, had spent his entire career being the most qualified person in any room. He looked at the woman in front of him, this quiet, underestimated night shift nurse, and something shifted in him. Something settled. "Yes," he said. "Then walk with me," Sarah said. "We have a north exit to secure." She turned and moved down the corridor. He followed. Outside, in the darkness beyond the perimeter wall, there was movement in the tree line. But there was also something else now, something distant, growing closer. The sound of rotors. 13 minutes and 40 seconds. That was what Sarah had. She moved through the hospital like she had built it herself. Left at the pharmacy hall. Down the service stairs. Past the sub-basement door, she knocked twice. Paused. Knocked once more. Confirming to Tariq inside that the protocol was still holding. She came up through stairwell B into the north corridor. The emergency exit door was there. Old steel. The frame she had flagged on her first day, compromised at the lower hinge. A gap wide enough to be forced with the right tool. She wedged a supply trolley against it, tilted it at an angle that would slow entry by approximately 40 seconds without blocking medical staff movement. 40 seconds was a lot. Dr. Abbasi had stopped asking questions. He was simply watching now, following. His hands were steady. He was a trauma surgeon after all. A man who worked with urgency as his constant companion. But his eyes kept going back to Sarah with a look she would have recognized if she had paid attention to such things. It was the look of a man recalculating everything. The guard at the main gate, Abbasi said quietly as they moved. "The one standing wrong." Sarah looked at him. "You noticed?" "I notice things," he said. "I just usually notice them about medicine." A pause. "He's one of them? Likely compromised. Could be coerced rather than complicit." She didn't slow her pace. "Which is why I haven't given the order to treat him as a threat. Not yet." Abbasi absorbed this. "You gave an order. To Overwatch?" "Yes." He was quiet a moment. "Who are you, Sarah?" She stopped at the corner before the main ward. "Check the sightline. Clear." "Exactly what my badge says," she told him. He almost smiled. "Almost a floor nurse." "A floor nurse," she agreed. She pulled the encrypted radio, pressed it to her ear. The voice from Overwatch was already talking. "Alpha 7 secondary unit has eyes on north approach. 3 confirmed hostiles moving toward your position. They know you're inside. Understood. Recommend non-lethal suppression on northern approach in 90 seconds. I have a compromised north exit being held by a trolley block. Give me time. Copy. 90 seconds. You're still primary. Hold." She tucked the radio away. Turned to Abbasi. "I need your voice, not mine." She held his gaze. "Get on the hospital intercom. Tell staff this is a lockdown drill. Essential personnel to interior rooms. Stay calm, stay professional. Make it sound like something you've said before." Abbas took one breath. "And if they don't believe me, they'll believe you," Sarah said. "Because you're the doctor." She watched something cross his face, the ghost of the arrogance that had lived there all these months, and dissolve. He nodded. He went. Sarah moved to the window at the end of the north corridor. Outside, the darkness was not what it had been. She could see shapes, low, fast, moving along the outer wall. 3 of them, exactly as Overwatch had said. She pressed 2 fingers to the wall. An old habit, feeling for vibration. 4 footsteps through concrete. Their northeast corner. Someone climbing. She went to the storage closet 7 meters down the hall, opened it. Inside, behind mops and cleaning fluid, was the emergency floodlight panel. She had found it on day 1. She had noted it. She had thought this could be useful. She flipped 3 switches in sequence. The exterior north and east walls of the hospital lit up like a stadium, every floodlight blazing. From outside came voices surprised, sudden. Movement disrupted. The careful, tactical advance of the 3 figures stalled completely. They were exposed, visible, and the sound of rotors was no longer distant. It was close, very close, heavy and rhythmic and certain. Somewhere in Ward 7, patient monitors beeped their steady song. Amina was sitting with the child who had been crying, holding his hand, telling him something about the morning. Tariq was in the sub-basement with his newspaper, reading with deliberate calm. Dr. Abbas's voice came through the intercom, measured, assured, exactly right. "This is Dr. Abbasi. All non-essential staff, please move to interior corridors as a precautionary measure. This is a standard drill. Please remain calm and follow ward protocols." The building obeyed. Sarah stood at the window. The floodlights burned. The rotors hammered the night sky. 9 minutes had passed. 5 more to go. She folded her hands. She waited. The helicopters came in pairs. 2 Black Hawks, no markings. Descending through the amber pre-dawn sky with the authority of things that do not ask permission. They landed in the hospital parking lot. Their rotors didn't stop. Men poured out tactical gear, night optics, moving in coordinated silence and surrounded the perimeter in under 40 seconds. The figures in the tree line disappeared. The men on the outer wall vanished. The guard at the main gate who had been standing wrong was quietly escorted away from his post. Hands secured, expression blank with the particular look of a man who knows exactly what is happening to him. It was over before the morning birds knew to start singing. Sarah stood in the hospital's main entrance corridor, radio in hand, watching through the glass as the tactical teams cleared the outer perimeter zone by zone. Each confirmation came through her earpiece in a flat, professional voice. East clear. North clear. Service entrance clear. She exhaled once. Then she turned around. Dr. Abbasi was standing in the hallway behind her, and behind him, Amina, Rohana, Lena, Tariq, who had come up from the sub-basement, and half a dozen night shift nurses and orderlies, all of them watching her. Nobody spoke. Sarah looked at the small crowd of people who had worked beside her for 3 months. People who had handed her charts and asked her to fetch coffee and assumed she was just another quiet woman doing a quiet job. She said nothing. There was nothing to say. The front doors opened. A man walked in. He was in full military dress uniform. 4 stars on his shoulders. Silver hair, short, severe. Boots that struck the tile floor with absolute precision. Behind him, 2 aides in formal military jackets carrying sealed document cases. He walked directly to Sarah. He stopped in front of her. And without hesitation, without preamble, without any of the words that might soften or explain or prepare the people watching, he raised his right hand to his temple and held it there. A full formal military salute. To the nurse. The corridor was so silent that the fluorescent lights above felt loud. "Major," the general said. His voice was gravel and gravity. "Your mission protocol held. The asset inside this facility is secure. All hostiles are in custody." He lowered his hand. "On behalf of the Joint Command, you have our full acknowledgement." Sarah gave a single nod. Crisp, certain. "The staff here," she said, and for the first time her voice had something in it beyond calm. Something warm, something that mattered. They held their positions without knowing what they were holding. Every one of them. The general looked at the small crowd. At Abasi, at Amina with dried tears on her cheeks. At old Tariq holding his newspaper like a shield. "Noted," the general said. "It will be recorded." He turned and walked back toward the entrance. Aides following, doors swinging shut behind him. The parking lot lights were coming on. Dawn was beginning to show at the edge of the sky, not red today, not orange, but a pale, tentative gray. Like the world wasn't sure yet whether to be afraid or relieved. Sarah turned back to face her colleagues. Dr. Harun Abbasi was standing very still. The man who had called her just a floor nurse. The man who had signed off her work without reading it. The man who had mispronounced her surname for 3 months without correcting himself. He was looking at her the way you look at something when you realize you have misread it completely. Entirely, since the beginning. His mouth opened. No words came. Sarah reached up and straightened her hijab, which had come slightly loose in the course of the night. She smoothed her scrub collar. "The morning shift arrives in 40 minutes, she said. "Ward 7 will need a handover brief. 2 of our critical patients need fresh vitals before the day team takes over." She looked at Amina. "Can you start the handover forms?" Amina let out a sound that was half a laugh and half a sob. "Yes," she managed. "Yes, I can do that." Sarah picked up a patient chart from the nurse's station. The same gesture she had made 1,000 times on 1,000 nights. She walked down the corridor. The fluorescent lights hummed. A monitor beeped. The smell of antiseptic filled the air, familiar and clean and real. Behind her, in the corridor, nobody moved for a long moment. Then Dr. Abbasi did something nobody had ever seen him do. He walked to the nurse's station, picked up a stack of handover forms, and began filling them out himself. No one asked him to. He just did. In the days that followed, as the Middle East continued to burn, as US and Israeli strikes reshaped the map of power in Tehran, as Hezbollah fired rockets toward Haifa, as the world held its breath over the Strait of Hormuz and the remains of a nuclear program, a small military hospital in a classified corridor quietly resumed its work. Patients were treated. Wounds were closed. Nurses changed shifts. And somewhere in a secure government file, in a section accessible to fewer than 30 people in the world, a mission debrief was logged under a name that did not match the one on the badge. But the patients in Ward 7 knew her as Sarah, the nurse, the ghost. The one who was always there before you called her. If this story stayed with you, please subscribe this channel.